Hey, everybody. Good evening. My name is George Martinez, and I'm a candidate for the Anchorage Assembly here in East Anchorage, District 5, Seat I. And thank you for joining this conversation today. We'll be talking about economic development, and I'll have some entrepreneurs joining me to give their perspectives, some lessons learned, and also just to discuss the opportunities we have in our city to lean into entrepreneurship, small business development, and really community and economic development, everybody. But I want to start off by just acknowledging that I am broadcasting from my home in East Anchorage, and right here on the ancestral land of the Dena'ina Athabascans, whose stewardship once was and remains today. And I invite everybody to just pause at the start of our discussion and our time together for a brief land acknowledgement, whatever part of town you're tuning in from, or wherever in the world you may be seeing this when you see it. To folks tuning in, hey, good to see you all out there. How you doing? I got a shout out. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Kenzie, good to see you on the program today. And I'm really excited about this conversation today. We're going to get really right into it. We'll see how long it lasts. But we have a few entrepreneurs that I do expect to join us today. Jennifer Christensen has been invited to join us, and they'll hopefully be able to join in. I just received word from Jen Motika, who's part of the young professionals from the Chamber of Commerce, and who's a serial entrepreneur and community person as well. They're having a difficult time. But I just want to set up this conversation by recognizing the amount of hard work it goes into building your own business, creating that pathway for thinking of the work that people put in, but also the legacy that they're establishing. And also I wanted to highlight the way community entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs take the lessons that they often learn from businesses, take the skills that they learn that they put into business, and they bring that to solving community challenges and problems. And I just wanted to start off with a shout out to a friend and a supporter, John Swartz from Perfectionist Auto Sound. You know, John has a small business. It's a thriving business, very successful. But at the start of the pandemic, John saw a need to bring his 3D printers, his laser cutters, his design skills into fabricating and producing safety shields for first responders and for hospital workers. It's like, what a critical role to step into from an entrepreneurial perspective, leaning into those skill sets when we needed it most. So I just want to shout out all the entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs in our community, small business folks who lean into helping solve community problems. And on that note, I'm privileged to have a friend, a community leader, a serial entrepreneur, and a person with a deep heart for our community joining my screen. Hey, Jasmine Smith, everybody, is here with me today, and we're going to start our conversations off. But first of all, how you doing today, Jasmine? You're on mute.
Story of my life. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me part of this conversation today.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, you've been so important to catalyzing this conversation in various parts of the community that have been longing for the conversation, longing for resources, longing for direction. So I really want to get into that. But first, Jasmine, for folks who don't know who you are, please just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the area of your business focus now, and then also a little bit about your community focus as one of those social entrepreneurs that also leans into community work as well.
Definitely. So, in my entrepreneurial world, I wear two hats. I am a licensed and accredited business development consultant, and I love helping businesses get started with a focus on women and BIPOC businesses and high needs areas. And then I also work newly in the manufacturing and programming space for my company, BabyVin. And that has allowed me to really open up and learn about manufacturing, packaging, and products, and whole new business world that I honestly never thought about because I was in the service industry for so long. And then moving over to the community hat, we are the operators and founders of a space called Emoja Co-working and Incubator Space. And our main premise and goal is providing safe spaces for community and business to collaborate and work together and really look from a different lens on solutions for economics and finances in our communities and kind of address those wealth gaps.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jasmine. And I'm really excited about the way you position the work you do and the community kind of involvement, because the starting point was that you were trying to help people with your business model, right? And I would love to just hear a little reflection on how finding a way to help people evolved for you into uncovering your business lane. Like you said, you're finding your own business channel,
right,
where you're finding the manufacturing and the vending machine business nationally. That wasn't something that you were focused on when you were thinking about how to help people at the first place. So I would love to hear how that journey ignited for you along the way, just to inspire people to know that they can start where they are, even if it's just focused on how to help.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I want to tell people in this conversation of like economics, especially from the business world versus nonprofit world, there's sometimes a disconnect that those two don't coexist. And there's a disconnect that if you're a for-profit business, you're only about making money and you don't really have any buy-in to the community. And so I always found that strange that when people wanted to help, the answer was, I got to start a nonprofit. Whereas they forget that historically, in a lot of movements, it was the for-profit organizations that really helped fund those movements and fund those community initiatives. And that was always something that just kind of stayed in the back of my mind, remembering that even though I'm for-profit, it doesn't mean I can't help and give back, right? And so that was always kind of a catalyst for me, and my activities with my business was like, I can make money, yes, but we can also use this money to create jobs and do other really cool things. And so BabyVin kind of happened in a weird place where a lot of times entrepreneurship does happen. So I tell the story, it actually started off as a need, just being a single mom, shopping in the mall and finding myself out of what I needed. And then from there, it morphed into this bigger business and brand that I wasn't expecting. And what I found along the journey was getting started. I had that very first vending machine just in my garage and I didn't know how to use it. And I had to learn how to use it. But then from there, when I finally learned how to use the machine and I was comfortable enough stepping out, then I was able to say, this is something bigger than what I was expecting. And how can I utilize this brand to catalyst business change and opportunities nationwide?
Yeah, and serve that original purpose as you described.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Jasmine, I just want to dig in on that a little more, because what's interesting to me to note about the state of our economy and the state of Anchorage, the state of Alaska economy, is that per capita, we have more nonprofits than any other state, right? So to your point, people want to help oftentimes, and they think nonprofit, but on that same token, the level of financial organizational literacy to build successful nonprofits is often as low as it is to build a successful business. Like, so the starting point of uncertainty, of not knowing what's next, is equally as high in both regards. It seems like, why do you think people choose one or the other? Is it just exposure to nonprofits? Is it earlier financial literacy or business conversations, bringing it earlier in school, and we're just used to seeing the hand of goodwill essentially working in our communities through kind of big nonprofits. Why do you think people choose an equally difficult route more often than the business route that's going to provide a way of living as well?
So I'm actually really happy you answered. So I honestly believe two things. I feel like, as in business, there's always this issue of capital. People don't always have enough money to start their businesses. And I think that some people sometimes have that heart to do the work. And then other times there's this, well, I want to help and I want to give back. So isn't that a nonprofit, right? Or I don't have any money, but if I do it the nonprofit way, I'll get donations and support.
I'll get grants
back.
Right,
yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I just feel like by nature, we've just been kind of like conditioned to believe nonprofits are where you go to care and help and give back. And for-profit is where you go to make money and get rich. One cares and one doesn't. But, as I've grown in this journey, I realized that's not true at all. They intertwine so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Intertwine immensely. And I really appreciate now that you highlighted kind of barriers, barriers for entry, perceived barriers, the way we think about building from an idea forward, right? And so I want to get back to that, but I kind of want to just tap into this idea, Jasmine, and just see what you think, because to that same point, how important is it to ignite entrepreneurship in our city? And through the lens of that distinction, where we can have our heart for solving problems and helping in our community by having successful businesses or entrepreneurial endeavors. How important is it to ignite that for both economic development, but for solving problems in our city? And do you have any initial ideas of what people could spark their thoughts about?
Yeah, so I think the big word and theme is definitely innovation, and forgetting that it takes money to run pretty much anything. And so we sometimes forget that everything we do in our community is linked towards businesses and entrepreneurship. Even if it's a big company, it started small, right? And so that idea of supporting businesses, economic empowerment, and innovation for like new industries and new business ventures, I think it's important, because that's the jobs that we want to create. That's the funding for the nonprofits that we want to support. That's the funding for the candidates that we want to see in office. And so I think sometimes we talk heavily about workforce development in that job piece, but we forget that entrepreneurship and being the business owner and the business manager is an integral part in that piece.
Right. No, I appreciate that, because I think that the way I see economic development is really holistic, right? And I like that we're having a conversation focused on entrepreneur, focused on that space, economic development. I want to go deeper into sector and look at some kind of lessons learned. But I also want to just recognize that I like that you highlighted the workforce development aspect, not to the diminishment, but to the inclusion, right? To recognizing that it shouldn't be necessarily one or the other. And oftentimes on the road to building a small business, you're going to find multiple jobs along the way. And Lord knows that I focused on here in Anchorage during my time in the municipality. I want to focus on this more on the assembly, is the cradle to career and beyond pipeline that may go to university, may go to trades, may go into small business, but essentially we're starting pathway development and thinking about that much earlier, right? Yes. And then also coming back to upskilling for adults who've been displaced, who may have never had the opportunity to get into a small business on their own in the past, just different things. The conditions have changed nowadays. So there's resources coming into the new federal tranche. I really want to focus on igniting these these pathways forward, and by bringing it all together, you want to just highlight a little bit about how you see the pathway development, and then we have another guest I want to bring him right into the conversation that was able to join us, who's going to bring another small business creative perspective, which I think I'm focused on creative economy too. But talk a little bit about the pathways that you see and where we could kind of infuse some of those lessons.
Yeah. So first of all, workforce development is key, right? We're never saying that it's not. However, entrepreneurship and business ownership has to be one of those fundamental steps in the pathway for workforce development. Everything that runs, whether locally, statewide, or nationally, is an entity or some sort of a business in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a for-profit entity or nonprofit. And so I think there's a huge world and skill set that we're not really capturing yet, where we're not just saying the career paths, but the leadership paths, right? There's leadership and entrepreneurship as the business manager and the business owner. And my hope is that as we develop and we move forward, when we think about the pathway for innovation, what we can do, job creation, we have entrepreneurship prioritize the same way we do trades, the same way we do college, the same way we do any other path. And I think that really does put like investing, like funding, training, reminding young people that's a viable path. It's not a crazy off-put dream to own a business.
Right.
Everything around you is a business in some way, shape, or form. Some just got bigger and some are smaller, but it's a business and it should be supported.
Right. Absolutely. And more importantly, that the way the workforce and the workplaces are transitioning, having the ability to titrate in and out, right, of times where you may have a formal full-time employment, but other times where you're able to kind of lean into your own space. And me personally, I've definitely traversed both, and formal employment, full-time meets also kind of the entrepreneurship of doing business consulting and et cetera. So I appreciate that kind of keeping minds open earlier on. And I also think we could start off with pilot projects early on. I remember a project that I ran that worked with kind of a summer entrepreneurial initiative with refreshment distributors. At the time, it was like PepsiCo and another one where I was doing this work. And we had the ability for youth to kind of have a pop-up shop all summer long in different locations. And so I would love to see more entrepreneurial elements, even in programs like the Youth Employment in Parks. That may be other ways to just think about how to connect these dots. I appreciate it. Let's bring hello.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Great. I would love for you I've asked Jasmine to do the same thing. Please just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your business focus and then also your community focus.
Okay. My name is Antavia Hamilton, and I am the owner of Hamilton Enterprises and Resources. One of the brands that falls under that umbrella is my Magic Works Design Studio, where I focus on developing and creating educational and spiritual support programming, toys, games, and gifts. What I do in the community and what is important to me as an entrepreneur is making sure that Black voices and BIPOC voices are represented. I like to bring a lot of edutainment and spiritual support into the work that I do, so things are engaging, culturally relevant, and also promote fun so people can relax and learn different things about heritage and religion, spirituality, and talents that may not be familiar to them. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you for joining us. And just the same kind of line of questions, if you would, I'd love to just get a sense of your starting point into small business, into entrepreneurship. Are you lifelong entrepreneur, and so you've iterated different businesses, or have you come from a professional career at some point and made that transition? What is your background into your entrepreneurial journey?
I was No, I had jobs in traditional work settings and moved into entrepreneurship. I actually started a business to get just to have more flexibility in my life and my choices.
Mhm.
And I started off just with a business license, and through my being mentored by Jasmine and the Business Boutique, I learned to start thinking like an entrepreneur, not just a small business owner, and start growing something that I could support myself and also give back to the community. And so I, my business at first developed as consulting services, where I just put everything that I had learned and my experience and my talents in a bag. And when somebody needed something, I spread them on the table and say, "What do I have that I can share with you?" um, and that's been very fun, and I enjoyed that. But what really gives me joy is the artistic and creative side,
Mhm.
and just learning more that there are ways to be an entrepreneur in that area. Everything that we have seen has been designed or created by somebody, even if it's simplistic or really profound. And so we need more people and support to do those things. And so that's where I enter the arena. I'm bringing more creativity to spaces and having a lot of fun developing, and hopefully I'll make some money doing it.
That's I love the point about creativity, and I'll just reflect on these two parts. My first small business was a publishing company, and it's interesting. I built a small business to service my creative needs, right? My creative habits. So as I was going into the music business, I needed to have a publishing company for the publication royalties of my creative works, right? So that was 30 years ago, probably, that my first small business was to service my creative background, right? So I love the idea, just both in terms of servicing, but also then in terms of bringing it through your creativity into your business,
Mhm.
and having that kind of fulfill that creative need
Yeah.
that we have as creatives, meets going and actually doing a viable business. I
Hmm.
think that's really exciting, and it's just inspiring to people who there are a lot of creatives who don't necessarily see themselves through the lens of business owners, entrepreneurs, and some of that has to do with the way, Jasmine, I think you accurately described the way business has had a different kind of framing versus like caring in the nonprofit space. And so we find a lot of artists really giving to community, uh, often at the expense of building a business around their own creative habits. Does that land well with you, Octavia?
Yeah, that is. When I started my business, I started really focusing on the technical things I could bring to the world. I
Mm.
can write, I can design websites, things that like that we seem to put a really high value on, especially in business settings. We want to know if people can use Excel. Can they use word processing software? And I was doing those things and having an okay time, but I realized what I really wanted to do was a place where I could be creative and be with my family and friends. And so while I was focusing on all these traditional methods of business, I found that I was trying to build a business so I could have more time to be with my family, friends, and do my artwork. And so I had to let that go for a little bit and focus on it. And I started telling my family stories again. I started cooking and sharing my foods and just family history and culture. And as I started doing that and expressing my desire to do more of that at different engagements, I found that people enjoyed that and had an interest in it, that had value for people. And so I started backing off on all those traditional pathways that I thought was going to be going to make me a success, and I started focusing on sharing my crafts with the kids, showing them what a hoodoo doll is, and how we make magic out of everyday things. And then as I was doing that, people were asking if they could learn more about it. Do I have websites? Could they take a class?
Mhm.
Do I have a book? And so then it just kind of developed into, I can enjoy myself, I can relax and have fun, and I can still share this with the world and be an entrepreneur. Like, I don't have to make a choice between eating and being an artist. Like,
Right,
I can do both. And
right.
and it will allow other people to do that, because we have so many people of color who have ingrained in them or embraced the idea of American dream and making it looks this way, and you take these paths. But every once in a while, we see these amazing examples of people who seem to have like these extraordinary gifts and powers, and they jumped out, they could do all these amazing things, and they are success stories in a different way. We have the artist formerly known as Prince. We have the Jacksons, and we're like, wow, there's a handful of us. But then when we think about it, it's in our lineage. This goes way back. People of color, like it's the artists and the writers and the dreamers and the thinkers who helped shape the world and create it. And so really looking at that as these gifts that are so innate to us have value. And in fact, they've inspired movements and creativity around the world. They've rebuilt and created nations. They've woven people and societies together, and that's within us. Oh, heck, we got to tap into that.
And just to the innovation part, Jasmine, like let's look at this from a person who's listening today. They're following, they're listening whenever. I think they're getting excited. People may be inspired that they can and they can bring their whole selves. But let's look at what this represents as well. That it was just flashed and highlighted for us that from a creative idea, but a starting point of like not really knowing, into the work that you did, Jasmine, of helping people go from that point to a place where they're getting business mentorship and they're developing actual business, right? This is right here in real time. We see a living example. But I wanted to highlight that the part of innovation and creativity that was just highlighted for us. Go into that space, Jasmine, of what's the right way to do it? Because it seems to me that innovation and how people could find their pathway forward may be as different and and innovation may start there, even though there may be some common ground foundational things. But
Right.
Describe how there's more than one way to get forward in our community, so that we can begin to have a look at the state of opportunity in Anchorage.
Yeah. So it's my favorite question. And there are a few things that I like to always tell people in all spaces when it comes to radically moving forward and radically innovating, right? And so the first thing I always say is, number one, people have to unlearn their definition of business. And they have to understand, one moment, I'm on a panel. No.
Tell you to check in. Tell them to say hey.
Okay. So the first thing people have to do is unlearn their definition of business and recognize that idea of business that we have been taught is not the only way. And there's many ways and many languages of business. Mm-hmm. And I think unlearning what you thought you knew is number one, because if you don't unlearn what you thought you knew, you're going to already go into it with a limited mind and a one view side of what your potential is. Mm-hmm. The next thing I would say is reminding people business and culture mix. And taking opportunities to combine the entrepreneur who's running the business as the entrepreneurial person. And by that, I mean, it's recognizing who we are, what we've seen, what we've been through, and what we experience ultimately dictates how we see and do business, right? And so it's not possible to have this turn on, turn off feature when our stories, our narratives, and our experiences shape who we are in business, right? And so I have learned and found that allowing those opportunities for entrepreneurs to coexist as their whole selves opens up the door for the best type of ideas, the mm-hmm. best type of progress. Mm-hmm. Hold on real quick. Okay, this is part of working from home. Yes. So allowing people to be their whole selves in these business spaces opens up the greatest ideas. And then the third thing I tell people is, as you see right now, including kids and the young people, it's right. not, I don't even know where our culture changed to saying kids weren't acceptable in business. How will they learn if they don't see it and they don't get to show up? They don't get to come, be part of it. And so I find that those are the three foundations to starting radically different and unlearning what you've been taught about what business is. And then being able to hear from other people and recognize what is the American dream. It's different for everybody. Some people want to be a millionaire. Right. Some people just want to be paycheck to paycheck. Some want to have enough money to be comfortable. Some people want to buy back the block. And all of those are okay. And they're equally important. So my stance has always been, kind of in closing with innovation, is I have found if we meet people where they are, instead of trying to have a monolithic definition of what it means to do business, people are more comfortable. They have their best ideas, and the innovation and the trust flows better than me saying, show up in your business suit, 9 to 5, firm handshake. That's not our culture all the time. So let's, mash it up. And I find that is when I've had the coolest ideas, outcome, responses, and excitement, when it gets to be authentic and organic. Business is also grassroots, despite what people tell you.
Right. Let me just highlight to Jasmine that I totally agree. And I just wanted to flag that from me in terms of bringing my social entrepreneurialism into an activism and community engagement into the political arena, right? It really comes from a place for me of some of those same principles where unlearning, that redefining the terms and understanding kind of how power flows into systems that we may have been very marginalized in the past. So I think that that to me really resonates, and it's part of an opportunity that we have in terms of how we educate and how we inspire back to that pipeline, that cradle to career pipeline, how we really bring real practical operational knowledge and experience and mentorship into all of these arenas, so that we're thriving in the civic, we're thriving in the political, we're thriving in the entrepreneurial, but knowing that it takes the village in the first place, right? That it takes all of us. Tavia, I see you're shaking on the village. Yeah, it resonates with you how we share that collective. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's how I think that one of the things that if we're talking about the cradle to career pipeline is really looking at the educational foundation and where those values are and what those priorities are, because they're not often aligned with our cultural values. Right. And so some of the failures or the lagging that we're seeing is a resistance to what's not working for us. Right. And allowing kids to see that there are other opportunities and making it part of the curriculum in everyday language. Not everybody's going to go to college because they don't want to, and they have other career choices. Start talking, like when we start talking about this is how we fill out scholarship applications. This is how we fill out a business license application, kids, just in case you want to start your own business. This is what a small loan looks like. These are the steps that you'd have to take. These are mentorship opportunities. Right. When we shouldn't be telling kids, kids shouldn't have to wait till they're adult to find out about the Small Business Association. Right. We run them through all sorts of scholarship opportunities and college fairs, but not too often do we see a lot of career fairs. They're getting more popular, but it's not equally weighted. And by and far, I think a lot more of our kids are going to go to straight into the workforce, or they're going to go to career and tech schools more than colleges. As a college is we're finding out that the investment's not really paying off, especially for people of color.
Right. And let alone as we talk about remote workforce, as we talk about coding and different kind of innovation-based jobs and technology-based jobs, and the way those things are changing the landscape of future employment. It just highlights for me, and I want to shout out labor, the labor unions who are doing phenomenal work in our community, but who are also really focused on the cradle to career pipeline. And I was going to shout you out. My 14-year-old just came home from ski practice. Was it? Then you're going to come over here and say hello. I'm going to make sure he pops on the screen, Hank. So this way, hey. Oh, excellent. Right on. So that's my future, working on that right here. But I bring home information all the time. And recently I brought home one of those pamphlets from one of the labor unions. I think it was the laborers in this one, and their, apprenticeship program. And I love the apprenticeship programs from labor. I love those opportunities, getting them early on. Those are real strong pathways for jobs that are necessary now, but that fundamentally, I also want to I don't want to take away the sexy from working in those blue collar jobs that built a lot of our ability to even dream. Knowing that my father was a union laborer and worked, worked in his time, and a lot of folks just had that as a background, especially in Alaska, where they were building the state through those jobs. And there's a gap there where we have a tremendous opportunity for advancement in that direction too. So I just wanted to shout that.
There are excellent opportunities for people in apprenticeship programs.
Yeah.
My father was the first certified Black lineman in Alaska.
Boom.
He was the first,
Boom.
first.
See, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and he went through that. And my dad, my mother and father came up here in the early 70s and started their careers here because there was opportunities for people of color. My dad went through the apprenticeship program. He was local, I want to say local 1547.
Yes.
Yeah. My dad, I mean, he had the label on his truck and he was so proud of it. And my dad made a good living. My dad had good benefits. Right. He made a good living. He put us kids, us through college. My dad's retired and living happily in Louisiana now. He made good money, and overall, my dad said it really was up to a benefit. And my dad has a really big belief in unions.
Yes,
especially he's at his retirement party. He was thanking all the people for showing up at his retirement party and saying how hard some of the parts were, but he really appreciated the union for so many reasons, because as a collective, they were able to get more things done, accomplished. And he ended by saying, y'all people stick together, like support your union, be part of the union, because there are good structures in place. And so when people are thinking of viable career paths that are really going to give them support, definitely we have some really, really good apprenticeship programs. And I'm hearing great things about career tech and all these other
and let me just pivot into this place, because I got two more questions and we're going to really wrap it up. But on that note, there's a whole movement afoot, and I've promoted Destination Anchorage myself, and people coming here and how we take advantage of that. But on the flip side of it, the campaigns are focused on Destination Anchorage. I think there's Choose Anchorage, which is the Economic Development Corporation's focused on right now. But they're not just focused on choosing Anchorage as a destination, thinking of the tourism, the ecotourism, and they're thinking of how to attract people to move here, to stay here, because we are losing workforce or we're losing folk. And I think that that's not necessarily bad, but I have a challenge with the focus of building from within what we have as a starting point, to show what's possible, right? Yeah. So when I think of the jobs, and I think of these pathways, and I think of the opportunity, I also just want to make sure that we're flagging how we do that for ourselves. And so I just wanted to just get your sense of, what do you think about that investment here meets also how we begin to speak into that attracting talent, retaining talent conversation? Jasmine, I'd love to hear your reflections on that, because I know you're often asked about that question.
Yeah, that's a topic that I struggle with, truthfully. I feel like Anchorage is amazing. It could be even better. In some areas we excel, and I tell people all the time, living in Anchorage feels like living in a time, for me personally, in a good way, because I know my neighbors, the kids are outside playing. There's still that sense of I know who my people are. Right. But I feel like on the flip side of that, when we have these initiatives like Invest in Anchorage, Live, Work, Play, Tomorrow, Future, whatever, all those things, the piece that we're missing is you can't jump over who's already here, right? And so we have a gap with employment. We have a gap with businesses because they left. They were here and they left, right? And so the focus can't always be bringing in a new, because then the new eventually becomes the old, and then they become challenged and as well. We have innovation here. We have folks who want to do things here. They just need to be mentored, fostered, and given an opportunity to be at these conversations in the space. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with saying cool beans, come to Anchorage is great, but don't look over who's already here trying to make your city good. You know, maybe you need to support them more and invest in them more, and people will stay, right? And then they can say, I'm so happy here, you should come too. Not
Right.
we have so many deficiencies in certain areas, we need to recruit you from out of state to come fill the gap. We don't need to do that. We have great people here. So I think it should be a backwards approach, hearing from more of the people who are here, and not just the usual people, the usual suspects, but really branching out to off the beaten path, happy Anchorage residents and being like, why are you here? Why do you stay? And letting their stories kind of amplify. What do you need to stay if you're about to go? I think there's more power in that approach than brand new coming in.
If you got it going on, you got it going on. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fundamentally, right? And I agree 100%. People from myself included, and I've met people, and a friend of mine, Vic Fisher, is a person who's the last surviving member of the Constitutional Convention of the state of Alaska. So Vic Fisher graduated high school or went to high school in New York, right? And Vic Fisher lived in other places. People for many, many generations have found a place here and worked to build a better life for their families. And sometimes they did it in alignment and in harmony, other times not so much. But that legacy of coming here and building, so we do have that as part of, our reality, no question about that. But we still have over 35,000, 38,000 students in the school district. We may have lost a few thousand. We've got thousands, tens of thousands of students in the school district. We're still operating where in East Anchorage, we have, in the Northeast community, we have people who are more likely to have more than one job than more than one house. Right. So we still have a working family city that haven't necessarily felt like their opportunity is here, nor their kids. That you're exactly right. We're an aging city, which means people who worked here decided to stay here and hope that their children and their grandchildren would also come back. And so we're failing on the intergenerational promise for our seniors as well. We really need to think about an intergenerational city when we're talking about how to be attractive to anybody in the future. I agree 1,000%. Tavia, you had a reflection on that?
Yeah, I was thinking I'm getting to that age where I'm like, Alaska, what we gonna do here? I know people of certain age, a lot of people do leave. And I think making sure that we do have an intergenerational support system and say, hey, why are seniors leaving? Right. A lot of people, when they get older, they come here, they raise their family, they make their money, and they're out. And that's it. That is a thing. We have a few pockets in town. Like I live in Midtown, and we do seem to have a lot of long-term residents. And when they leave, their family buys that house. I'm I'm the second generation owner of my house.
Nice.
But that's not really typical. We have a lot of people that snowbird or they leave and never come back, And I think really talking to people, like you said, and saying, hey, are you happy here? What can we do to support your happiness? Do you plan to stay long term? If so, why? And if not, why not? And like really addressing and focusing on it, because I don't think that we have enough senior care and support. Alaska's winters are tough, and my dad was out of here when he retired, and he had a good life here. Like he loved it, but he was like, nope, I'm out.
Right. But more and more we are aging because of flight and because of who's staying. So that infrastructure is not in place. This is sidewalk accessibility, mobility just around all of Anchorage. And so there's streets, trail connectivity, let alone the support that you're describing. There's total gaps that we could be supportive of, but it's just to the point of understanding the ecosystem. So I think the way we get back on track, back in our economy, one of the critical ways to get our economy moving forward is investing in early childhood education, right? Helping people be able to have high quality, affordable childcare and early childhood education so they can actually go to those employment opportunities, career opportunities, training opportunities, let alone what it takes to run a small business, like we have here with Jasmine and representing. So I know that's a critical concern. Jasmine, I'd love to just reflect on what you see, and Tavia, you follow. This is the follow up to you as well. But what you all both see as emerging opportunities, maybe emerging sectors that you may not be so fully versed in, but that's exciting for people to start to pay attention to. Like we're earlier enough on where there may be some entrepreneurial opportunities moving, into those directions if we're thinking about it early on enough. So, Jasmine, we can start off with you. What do you see as emerging sector or opportunities? I heard one today. Just let me flag one I heard. Manufacturing, light manufacturing, something that I think is something we can work toward. Jasmine has I don't know if that's going to work for both of y'all businesses, but that's a sector that I think is interesting to our ability to have value added, adding value along the kind of supply chain line. Right. And with our airport, and we can leverage some things there. But Jasmine, let's hear from you, and then Tavia, take us to that same question.
Yeah. So for me, there are two industries that I'm really excited about. Okay. And it is number one, manufacturing. I feel like a lot of times our stuff that we get is from out of state. Yeah. And it took me having a couple like baby event to be like, oh my God, I need a box. Can't get a box built here. I need a custom bag made. Can't get the bag made here. I need something built. Really can't get it built here. And so I'm really excited about seeing how we can expand on manufacturing opportunities. Right. If we can get it from China, I feel like we can get it from Alaska. Right. And the other thing I'm really big on now that I've gotten older is the development of the entertainment industry. A big reason a lot of people who are young leave is they say they're bored. And so sometimes in these planning conversations, everything is about health, kids, parks, whatever, but people want to have fun in other ways. I miss being able to go downtown to 4th Avenue and there's all sorts of bars and fun night spots to go to that are responsible. So I just really feel like the ability to make our own stuff locally and produce it and manufacture it would be huge. Yes. And the ability to have fun. Sometimes you just want to have fun and unwind. More entertainment businesses would be great. So that's my two things. Nice.
Excellent. Tavia?
So I think that one of the industries that I'm hoping develops and I see emerging in small pockets is village industries. I'm seeing a lot of people participating in Saturday market, opening up their own Etsy stores. Yeah. And in places like India, when I visited, they have people like all sitting around doing that common craft together. And though they're individuals, they're selling it at market, so they are able to increase their output and really make an industry and money out of that. And I'm seeing a lot of people that do jams or sweaters. And I'm thinking at some point, people are going to start pooling up and taking over other spaces and really getting these balls moving, because if properly structured and supported, we could really do a lot to have in-house supplies in Alaska. We just haven't really investigated that structure. Right. And successful economies, they're not importing as much as we are. They are exporting more, or they're relying on what they have. But to constantly bring in so much goods and everything, it just creates a weird dependence that we need to get away from.
Wonderful. Now, and I agree 100%. Yeah, Jasmine, I'm stoked on the manufacturing question. I think there's some real opportunities there. Let me flag some things in the ecosystem that support those notions, right? First, the expansion of cold storage and storage at the Ted Stevens International Airport. We're expanding the ability to have storage there. And even Amazon is now looking, if they haven't kind of moved in that direction already, to increase the amount of storage that they have at our airport for shipping stuff faster and cutting the distances. So there's a real interesting opportunity when we think of the gateway to the east, and we think of the kind of geo positioning where Alaska is. If we're adding value here, we're able to begin to export that value from here, to your point about import, export. And it's just really about finding the value added elements. And, one of those things that people have talked about, and I sit on an agricultural advisory board, is hemp production and industrial hemp, thinking of the manufacturing usages for that. So there's some things to explore. And I just wanted to flag that is exciting. And there are tremendous opportunities in that we can explore in manufacturing for those exact purposes that you talked about. And I'll also flag just the idea of the cottage industries, Tavia, where you're talking about the small kind of, jam maker. Well, one of the things that we do have is we have interesting stuff in the summertime in Anchorage. I want us to be a year-round city, and snow removal. I'm just saying, we're a winter city. If you want to advertise, we got to be able to deliver on the promise of that. But it's also about making sure our people can enjoy the city, right? So like the seniors don't get homebound, all sorts of things. But just to the cottage industries, farmers markets and those small marketplaces are really interesting. They're great. And like in East Anchorage, we have the Muldoon Farmers Market. People know it's the happiest farmers market. We always have music. We also have the Hmong Market up in Centennial Park. Those things were highlighted in Anchorage Economic Development Corp's Visit Anchorage, Destination Anchorage, Choose Anchorage assets and kind of community resources. So they're like, look, when people come to Anchorage, how do we get them to see more? And here's the idea that I think we may be able to focus on. There are economic corridors that are not just downtown that have a tremendous opportunity to become anchors of destination enhancement, like the Muldoon Farmers Market and the economic corridor of Muldoon, like in West Anchorage, you got Spenard and that corridor as well. And in Midtown, you have the other corridor from the Midtown Mall. The idea is that if people go downtown, the tourist industry, they could go downtown and they go to the Captain Cook, they usually stay in that vicinity. But if they can go a little further and stay a little longer from downtown into community, into Mountain View to see the food, to see the shops, right? The creative art around, and you create destination placemaking and community corridors. Well, I think it's going to serve our local purposes, but it's also going to give destination opportunity for people to visit Anchorage, not just to stop in Anchorage to visit Alaska. And I thank you all for being with. Any closing thoughts you would like to leave people with, any final reflections or any resources that people may be able to find you on or look up so that people know how to get in touch or what's available for them. We'll start off. Let me go to Tavia, and then we'll end off with Jasmine.
Yep, you can find me at Hamilton Enterprises on Facebook, or Meet the Hoodoos, which is my African American hoodoo doll line that I'm developing, and they're on Facebook as well.
Excellent, thank you.
You can meet me. You can find me at Emoja Co-working on Facebook, or Baby Vend on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or the Business Boutique on Facebook. One of those three will get you to me.
Thank you, both of you all. Thank you for being friends. Thank you for being inspirational people in our community, for bringing your time, your talent, and your energy into kind of moving our community forward. I teach my son by wellness starts with how you care for yourself and how you're able to bring yourself into your vision. So by doing that, you're helping to give other people inspiration while you're making that pathway forward. Everybody, my name is George Martinez. I want to thank Jasmine and Tavia for joining me. And I just really want to flag and highlight that we have the tremendous opportunity in Anchorage to come together with our entrepreneurial spirit to solve community problems, but to also ignite our shining city on the hill, to ignite our city with a new spirit of innovation and hopefulness by coming together with our creative talents and our entrepreneurial visions. My name is George Martinez. I am a candidate for the Anchorage Assembly right here in East Anchorage, District 5, Seat I. The municipal elections are coming up, and I hope for your support. Visit my website at georgeforanchorage.com and stay tuned for more conversations and more community involvement. We're just beginning. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.